All right, once again, good evening, everybody. It is June the 27th at 7 p.m. This is EDLS 740, and my name is Joe Bullis, and I am privileged to be with this wonderful group of people, and I really enjoyed getting to know you guys a whole lot better and just kind of hanging out with you in the weekend. I hope everybody's had a good week so far. So we will go ahead and get started. I think I'm going to go ahead and pull the agenda up. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let's do this. And we do have some others joining us, so we'll go ahead and proceed forth while everybody's jumping on. So this is session 5, and I don't know about you, but I just really find that hard to believe. We only got 2 more Zoom sessions and 2 more weekend sessions. And then you're going to be done, right? So then you go into, you turn in from a candidate and doctoral student into a dissertation researcher. So that's got to be exciting for you. And so I'm happy for you. I'm seeing a little bit of a smile come across your face. So that's good. That's good. So you can be done with assignments. You can be done with reading for coursework and read for what you need to read for your dissertation. So it's going to be a transition for you. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you something. I don't know if I told you this before. You'll probably hear me say it again. But regardless, I know I'm not your dissertation coach. I have chaired several dissertations and been on committees. Even though I'm no longer your course instructor after this point, after this semester is over with, if you ever need me, my contact information is going to stay the same. You reach out. If you want another set of eyeballs on something, or you want to talk something through, or just kind of, if you just want to vent and to somebody safely, that's fine too. I'm here for you. So just like I said, I'll probably say that again, but I just wanted to throw that out there while it was on my mind. So let's look at the agenda for this evening. Based on requests that I got over the weekend, um, I'm going to do a presentation on the CEP cap and dole expenditure plan. I'm going to share a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to see what questions you have. I'm really only going to go over part A and B this evening, because we do have another Zoom meeting before we meet in person, face to face, the weekend of July the 13th and 14th. But please note, if we will not be meeting next Thursday. Next Thursday is July the 4th. I think it's important that you guys spend that time with your family. So we will not be meeting July the 4th. We will be meeting next Tuesday, July the 2nd. We will have our Zoom session 6 on July the 2nd, same time, 7 p.m. next Tuesday, because we're not going to be meeting for July the 4th, which is on a Thursday. So we'll if you have any questions about that, let me know. If you forget and then remember and come in late, that's fine. You should know by now I'm easy to get along with, as long as I know that the people's intentions are honorable and integrity is in their mind, then I'll get along with anybody. So once again, we're going to be meeting next Tuesday, July the 2nd, instead of next Thursday, July the 4th. I do have to meet with a 605 MELS cohort at 6, just jumping on Dr. Stone's class to talk to some of my interns, but I should be done by 6:30. So there's no reason I shouldn't be able to join you at 7. However, if I'm not on there, just be patient. I'll come on shortly. So, and I may send out a reminder about that first of next week, or maybe next Tuesday, just to remind you that we'll be meeting on Tuesday, July the 2nd. All right, so your reflections were really good. I enjoyed reading your reflections from this weekend. I pretty much feel like I know how you feel about last weekend. I thought it was very insightful. I think some of you have got good thoughts on what your next step should be, and kind of what you need to focus on and what you need to find out more about. And if you did say something that you were kind of felt like you needed some more help with and wanted to find out some more about, I'm going to review those again before we meet face to face. And if there's anything I can bring to the table when we meet face to face this weekend, excuse me, not this weekend, but July the 13th and 14th, that weekend, I'll help to add some stuff to that to hopefully answer any questions that you have. Some of you, I recommend that you contact some specific people that could reach out and help you. So, does anybody have anything they would like to add about this weekend that's just burning a hole in your brain? You're just wanting to share with others, maybe some, funny gestures somebody had, or maybe some pictures that were shared about somebody. I'm just saying, I don't want anything, if you don't talk about it and get it out and express your feelings, then it can fester. And I don't want that to happen with this crew. So, all right, all right. So anyway, anybody have anything? Thank you for smiling. I love those smiles. Love them, love them, love them. So anybody have anything they want to share from this weekend? Okay, great. Like I said, I think you did a great job on the reflections. So, you guys know how to listen, you know how to respond, and you know how to act. So, I think you do a great job. I was really impressed, by the way, of how you conducted yourselves when I wasn't able to be on the Zoom with you. I mean, you fell right in. You could tell you guys were professional, and that speaks highly of your training so far and your experiences so far that you've gone through, and I really appreciate that. So, like I said, tonight I'm going to talk about the capital expenditure plan, the CEP. I'm going to talk about parts A and B, and then we're going to get into the presentations. Anera is presenting, and I haven't looked to see who's here and who's not here. Anera, it is good to see you. I hope you're feeling better.
Much better.
Awesome, awesome. It is great to see you. We missed you this weekend, but I'm glad I got a chance to talk to you for a little bit, and it's so good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, what a tough, tough lady you are. I'm just so impressed. And Eric is presenting, and then Whitney. And even though Whitney had offered to not present and just forego her presentation so we could have the CEP, I think I've worked it in, Whitney. I don't want to disappoint you because I know all that brain power needs to be shared so others can benefit from it. So I don't want to be a stumbling block in making that happen. So I think we'll be good to go on there. And then we'll talk about the excuse me, I'll talk about it in a minute, but the optimistic closure. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up a little presentation that I did. On the capstone project. So your capstone project is the capital expenditure plan for 740. It will not go to anybody but me. So there's no state evaluator, there's no other professor that will review it. I'm the only one going to review it and give you feedback. But then I'm gonna be upfront with you. My clinical coach kicks in on stuff like this. If I feel like there's some revisions that need to be made to it or have some suggestions or recommendations, I may send it back to you. Now, but I promise not to do anything. Now, I promise not to do anything that will hinder you or slow you down from completing the semester. But, I don't feel like this is an issue with this group, but you when you present in front of the board or you present in front of a bunch of teachers, and this environment, not so much. But when your paycheck is on the line and you're representing, you're out there with the community and stuff, you want to make sure that it's the best it can be. You want to proof it. You want to make sure that there's no the data is accurate and everything is beyond question. Because especially if you're presenting to the Board of Education, because I can't tell you how many times I've done a presentation from the board and continue to go and attend board meetings and present. There's always somebody out there looking for something to draw attention to. There's always a newspaper guy out there looking for something to draw attention to. So you just want to always do something as professional as you can, especially if it's out there in the community. So let's talk a little bit about your capstone project, and that's your capital expenditure plan, or the CEP. So It is a great opportunity when you have capital funds that you can use to upgrade facilities, to upgrade parts of a facility, to build new facilities and everything like that. It's a great opportunity. It is where you take some. Usually, we're talking about large amounts of money, but you take some large amounts of money and you effectively prepare for some type of improvement or some type of new facility. And that in doing that, you need to prepare for it. You need to have all the questions answered. You need to know exactly what's going to happen. And this doesn't involve you. We're talking about several people. We're talking about, of course, your maintenance director, your maintenance team. But we're also talking about community. How's it going to, and it is some of the things that you've already talked about in your presentation, but how's it going to affect the community? Has the community been made aware of it? Have they had a chance to give feedback on it? Do you have your general contractors set up? Do they have their subcontractors set up? What's the timeline? What resources are we going to need in doing all this? So there's a lot into that. And so there's always a good idea to have a CEP, a capital expenditure plan. And some systems do, to where you know when, what year, what date you're going to start a project and you're going to finish a project. Because basically, as I said in my notes, there's two types of funding that come into the school district. There's day-to-day operational funds, and that's things that get consumed day in and day out. That's supplies and materials, that's salaries. And of course, the highest percentage of any budget anymore in education is going to be salary. That's going to be 90 plus, at least 85 to 90% of a budget for a district is going to be tied up in personnel and salaries. But that's supplies and materials, that's gas that you get for the buses, that's food that comes in for the kids to eat, that's electricity, expenditures out to electricity, is those things. And then there's long-term fixed funding, and that's your capital fund. And so, like I said, this is usually large amounts of money. It usually requires a long-term investment, whether you're starting a new facility, you're expanding a facility, or you're adding on to a facility. It's long-term and it's risky because, and I'll tell you a story here in a minute, but these are investments that usually it's going to take a long time to complete. And you got things like shipping delay. COVID happens. You got things like shipping delays, procurement delays. Many parts have to be going on at the same time. You have to, if you're building the facility, you have to lay your footers, and then you got to get the concrete guy lined up, and then you got to get the cinder block guys and the masonry guys lined up, and then at what point in time does electrical come in? What point in time does plumbing come in? Keeping the board members update, keeping in touch with your maintenance director. Is he being able to handle it on time? Pulling your architects in before the whole time to get all that done. So it's just a lot of moving parts. Now, I'm going to tell you a true story. If you ever come to Wilkes County, you'll know I'm telling the truth. So I think I was principal of Mulberry Elementary School, and we're probably talking about 2001, Wilkes County Schools got funding to build 4 brand new middle schools. And constantly from day one, the tile guys were behind, the sheetrock guys were behind, the electrical guys were behind. And I've already communicated out to the whole community that these brand new schools are going to be open at this point in time, at this school year, and your children will be able to step off the bus and step into a brand new facility. So we're sweating it the whole time. And a good friend of mine was the director of the maintenance director at the time. So, of course, he would call and we'd talk quite a bit. Well, if you go to Wilkes County schools and you look at the middle schools, they all have these nice, beautiful red metal, or excuse me, these nice, beautiful tin roofs. All of them's got tin roofs. For whatever reason, I still don't know the story or still don't know the truth behind it, but the colors for Central Wilkes Middle was green and white. They've got a blue tin roof. The colors for North Wilkes Middle was blue and white, and they got a green tin roof. And so the colors, somehow the shipping guy, the installation guy, Nobody thought to check, is this the right color for this school facility that matches the color of their school? And it wasn't. And they went on and nobody caught it. Can you believe that? Nobody caught that during construction, that the color of the roof did not match the school's color. And that has been a sore point in Wilkes County for many, many years. So I'm just saying that as an example, is there's a lot of moving parts you got to keep up with and a lot of attention to detail. And that's where the capital expenditure plan can help you. It is a true opportunity to provide equitable resources to everybody, regardless of your race, regardless of your economic disability, regardless of your learning disability. You can walk into the same type of facility and have the same type of enjoyment, receive the same meal as anybody else, be transported to school as anybody else, or be transported to school in a way that you need to be transported, that you can arrive safely. So the capital expenditures, facilities, school nutrition, transportation, your auxiliary services, it's a pure opportunity. You can provide it. And, you know, we've all seen this. We've all seen the equality, the equity, the reality, but this can remove all barriers. You have your ADA compliance. If you need an elevator, there's an elevator in there. If you need a ramp into the building, there's a ramp in there. If you can't afford a meal, we will provide one to you. If you need a wheelchair access to a bus, we can provide that for you. So capital funds really gives the district an opportunity. It's really the only opportunity where you can pretty much guarantee that everybody gets treated equitably. So in these type of funds, you get capital funds for specific projects, you know, like the North Carolina lottery. You know, we get a piece of that action that can only be spent on capital funds. And then sometimes your legislature in your building may designate capital funds for a specific project. We've had and they do this during the meeting. They'll slip in something during during the opening session when everybody's voting on the budget. And all of a sudden there's some money in there for a $3 million gym at Weddington High School in Union County. You know, so the legislature can, representatives and senators can slide things into the budget where maybe some people from their hometown gets a specific pot of money that can only be used for a specific way. Same thing happened to Wilkes Central High School in Wilkes County. We got, I think it was like $9 million to build a new gym. That one of the legislatures put that into the budget. So we got $9 million dropped in our lap. Well, we've got schools over 50 years old like everybody else. We could use that $9 million to upgrade some schools and to improve some schools and do some needed repairs and stuff. But that money can only be spent on the gym. Schools all over the state now are getting money that can only be spent for turf and or new tracks around their fields. So you may get large amounts of capital money, but with that comes some very distinct directions on how you can spend that money. You may get a donation from a philanthropist for a new facility for something. Wilkes County Schools got Larry Stone, who was the vice president of Lowe's Home Improvement one time, gave money specifically for a performing arts center. Of course, now we call it the Stone Performing Arts Center, but that's a large amount of money that was just spent for that specific facility or for that specific upgrade. Now with ESSER funds, and everybody's familiar, everybody knows what I mean when I say ESSER funds, right? We're all familiar with ESSER funds. If you were in a Title I school, then I'm sure you've probably been really familiar with them. With ESSER funds, a lot of school systems use that money to improve some schools, to build some facilities, to upgrade HVAC. It all had to be tied into COVID. It all had to be tied into either preparation for or the response of COVID. So a lot of districts totally revamped their HVAC systems, got rid of boilers, put in electric heat pumps, put in new air conditioners and HVAC because of air quality. Well, along with that came some specific compliance and regulations with that money. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If you're ever part of a capital expenditure fund and they're planning on using federal money that's been allowed to be used for some type of facility, some type of upgrade. Please know that if you ever sell that facility, then the federal money is going to want federal government's going to want their money back. You can't use federal money to make federal money. You can't take Title I dollars and buy lottery tickets or buy a TV and then auction off the TV and reap the funds. That's a big no-no with federal funding. So if you use federal money to invest in a facility and you upgrade the facility and you improve the facility, and then that facility closes and you sell it or the county commissioners take it over, the federal government's going to come and want their money back. And you don't pay, if you make the federal government mad and you do something inappropriate with federal money, they don't want you to pay it back with federal money. You have to pay it back with state and local money. So it's a big thing with federal. So using ESSER funds, I don't know if any of your districts did this, but using ESSER funds to improve facilities and improve HVAC, you want to be careful if you do that to a school that might have 70 students in it, you think it's going to be closing in the next 10 years. Because if that school closes and you sell that, then they're going to want their money back, or they're going to come and rip that HVAC system. I was federal programs director, and we see the federal money. And part of receiving federal money is a proportionate share to those educational organizations, recognized educational organizations within the district that serve students too. And I'm talking about Christian schools, recognized home schools, charter schools. So we had to contact them and said, if you have students that are economically disadvantaged, which is how Title I is identified, if you will show us the criteria about identifying those economically disadvantages, whatever we're spending per pupil on our students, we will allow you to have access to federal resources, federal money in the same per pupil allotment. So I had a couple of Christian schools, and we figured it out. They got money for water fountains. They got money for tutoring. They got money for cleaning supplies. Well, during that process, the federal government's come back or the Department of Public Construction said at the end of that funding cycle, when that funding cycle closes, if they bought laptops, you go get the laptops back because they belong to the federal government. And even to the point where if you put in a water cooler, go get the water cooler back. But then there was we had to read through the law and some interpretation. It said when feasible. So it may be feasible to go back and grab a laptop, but it's not feasible to jerk a water cooler out off the wall of somebody's Christian school. So we got around that, and I just kind of guided my principals at the Christian school saying, you do not want to put this money into anything that can be carried out the door later. Put it into tutoring, pay professional development, cleaning supplies, consumables, things like that. So just know that there's a lot of huge funds that come into the system that can be used for capital projects, but they usually come with some strict regulations on how to use those. So it's always a good idea to have the capital expenditure plan. All right, so the CEP overview. Part A is going to be the needs assessment. Part B is going to be the marketing plan. And this is where you can really draw on those managerial plans that you created, the auxiliary director interviews, your chapter presentations, and stuff that's already out there, especially in terms of the needs assessment and the marketing plan, and even in Part C. You can pull from that. So doing those things wasn't necessarily a bad thing because you can pull from some of that stuff. Like Part A is about looking at the district budget. Well, many of you pulled in a lot of district budget stuff already in your presentation in your managerial plan. Part of it is taking a snapshot of the facilities. Well, many of you did that already with some of these plans and presentations you did. So there was method to that madness. So it's not, you should have resources already available to you to draw from that you've already did and written up that can go into this plan. So let's look at Part A, and let me pause here real quick. Does anybody have any questions at this point? All right, groovy. All right. So Part A is you're conducting the needs assessment. Now, I still want to spend a little bit of time with you on what a true needs assessment is, because whether you are a principal receiving Title I funds or you're receiving any type of federal funds as a non-Title I school, somebody at some point in time is going to ask you to conduct a needs assessment, especially if you're involved in career and technical education. They're really big on doing that needs assessment every 2 years for their local plan. If you're going to be a Title I principal, then you're going to be asked to do a needs assessment for the school. So when we meet together, I'm going to spend some time on what a true needs assessment is and kind of go over those pieces. Hopefully it'll be a good resource for you in the future. But right here for the CEP, you're just going to go do some investigation of your district. You're going to pull your district budget. You're going to see if there's any facility plans, and not I'm not talking about, drafts and drafting and architectural designs. I'm talking about what's the plan of the district. A lot of districts have a facility plan. Some of it's even posted on their website to where they say, these are the projects that we've got going on. This is when we hope to complete them, and these are the ones we've already completed. And some of you shared some of that, I believe, in your presentation. So you kind of know what's the projects and the goals of the district in terms of facility. Is that represented anywhere? Can you find that anywhere? Now, if you can't, that's fine. If you can't, just notate that in your narrative, because that's good information. Just like when you do research, whether you're looking for impact, well, you may have a negative impact. Well, either a positive impact on something or a negative impact on something, still an impact. And the fact that something had a negative impact is just as important as if a variable had a positive impact. So if you can't find any facility plans, then that's going to be part of your recommendation when you get on down into doing the marketing plan, is that they have a facility plan. You may even want to look at some other districts and pull in some facility plans to say, well, this is what I suggest or recommend it look like. Now, all of that, your budget, real quick, if you want to tell me what's important to a district, I'm going to tell you, if you're going to ask me what's the most important thing to a district or a school, I'm going to tell you to look at their budget. Whatever they spend their money on is what's most important to them. So is that represented in their mission? Is that represented in their vision, their stated mission statement, their stated vision? Can you find any correlation, or is it interwoven, their budget and their facilities of what they do and representative of what they say they're going to do? We believe all children can learn. Well, everybody believes all children can learn and all children can learn. But are you providing the resources and the facilities and putting money to make that happen? That you're providing equal access to everyone, in this case, in capital expenditure case, to facilities and to whatever. So is their mission and vision representative in their facility plans? And then you want to give a brief demographics of the facilities and the employees, just to tell the reader, which is me, I'm going to be the reader. Just tell the reader, this is a brief outlook. These are the facilities we have. This is an employee breakdown that's in those facilities. So just some demographic information. And you've already pulled in some of that for the presentations that you did up to this point. And there's the most important thing, is in the strategic plan of your district, does auxiliary services, not necessarily finance, because all things come through finance. Finance is the gatekeeper of all things in a school system. So we're not talking about finance is in a strategic plan just by default, because you got to spend money to get what you need to provide the best education you can for the kids. But is auxiliary services, child nutrition, transportation, maintenance, is that represented in the strategic plan anywhere? I challenge you, you don't have to do this, but I just challenge you, go to Wilkes County Schools website, look up our strategic plan, and see if you can find if auxiliary services is represented in our strategic plan. It is. For the first time in the history of the school system, it was put in last time I think we did it in 2021. It was put in, finally recognized the importance. You need to have a strategic plan that incorporates all of your district, not just the curriculum side, and not just student achievement. And I think people are realizing that now, but it involves a whole lot more comes together. The social emotional learning aspect that's so prevalent nowadays, all of that comes together for the betterment of the child. And that's part A. And we're going to go a little bit deeper here in just a moment. Part B is the marketing plan. And all this is just an action plan. What's your action plan? You did your needs assessment, you pulled in all that information. Where are the gaps? Where are the things that needs to be addressed? When you talk to your team and we'll talk about team and internal and external stakeholders here in just a minute. But when you talk to your internal and external stakeholders, or you talk to your team, what's their recommendation? What gaps do they want addressed? And you pull in the strategic you take a look at the strategic objectives, what can be approved on in the context of capital expenditures, facilities, in the context of capital expenditures and your strategic objectives, what can be approved on? How did you get that information? How did you share that with your internal and external stakeholders? And you create a graphic organizer, which is just basically an action plan. What are you going to do? Who's responsible for making it happen? When's it going to happen? And how are you going to evaluate the impact when it did happen? And that's basically part A and B. And I'm going to stop there, and we'll talk about C and D next week. But before we move on, I'm going to cut this out. And I don't want to save anything that I did. All right. And I want to pull up. This is the guidance document. Does everybody see that? The guidance document is just a Microsoft Word. Okay. Thank you, Tanya. I saw your face first. All right. So this is in the CEP. It's stated guidance document. It's in the shell. And this is a guidance document on part A and part B. And it's kind of just what I told you. You're going to do a comprehensive needs assessment. You're going to pull in the budget. But here is the way the template or the way the paper needs to flow. You need to do an intro, have your title page, and then you need to do an introduction. Why are you doing this? And don't say it's because I'm trying to get out of EDLS 740 and make Dr. Bullis happy so I can move on. That's not going to cut it. Even though if you tell me, you know, how good looking I am, how smart I am, I'm not saying that could hurt any, but anyway. So you just do an introduction, you know, the capital expenditure plan, and you're doing this and looking at your district and searching for ways to improve. You might want to pull in a little bit of research on capital expenditures, a little bit of research on facility improvement, throw it in there. District snapshot. You know, what's the facilities, what's the enrollment, the budget operation. You don't have to get into subgroups. You don't have to get into teacher qualifications. You don't have to pull stuff out of the NC school report card or anything like that. Basically, whatever you can get off the website is what you need for here. And then you introduce the needs assessment. And here's some good questions to look at. It doesn't have to be this way. I'm not telling you that. I don't want a cookie cutter document. I want it to be you speaking of what you think's important. And you guys have done a good job with that and the presentations and stuff. You pulled out some really good things. So finding and observations, what did you learn? You know, who did you share it with? And it's summertime, everybody's scattered. And if you can't share it with anybody or you can't talk to anybody because of where you're at right now, then write to how you will share it, write to how you will gain feedback. What's your plans for having meetings, PLC meetings, maybe going and speaking to the superintendent, maybe speaking to the leadership cabinet. So if you can't do that, then how would you do it if you had the opportunity to during the regular school year? How's it once again, how's it align with the mission and vision? And this is kind of what I said. Once it's all said and done, you come up with your recommendations or any objectives. When will you share it? Who are you going to share it with? And how will you share it? Any questions on this right here? Page numbers. I know that's probably on your mind is how long does this have to be? You're going to not like me for saying this, but as long as it takes. As long as it takes. Well, that's not good enough, Joe. Tell me, you want 110 pages? No, I don't want 110 pages. Well, then give me a parameter. You got to give me something to work with. Okay, quit arguing with me. You twist my arm. I got you. I got you. So I'm thinking, you tell me, I'm thinking 40 pages at the very maximum could handle this. I mean, we're probably talking about what, maybe 5 pages here. Time you do the demographics introduction, you show the strategic plan, you do your demographics, you talk about the mission and vision, maybe 5 pages here. Part B is just a graphic organizer. So maybe we're not talking about 40 pages. Maybe we're talking about 15 to 20. And I'm okay with that. If I don't think you did enough, I'll let you know. But I don't want you, you know, this is rush time, week 6. You got to get done. I got to help you get done. So, we're not going to make this, we're going to make it a quality document, but quality is not determined by number of pages. I've always said that. Don't put fluff in there. Just give me the bare facts. Marketing plan, here's the kind of the outlook on that is basically it's just an action plan. What's the plan based on what you found? What's the plan that you want to share with people to highlight? Could be to highlight something that's going on that's great. How can it be greater? Or where's the gaps? Where's the needs? And how can you address them? That's part A and B. Any questions? All right, good deal. Okay, good deal. So let's just take some deep breaths here. Let's stop sharing. All right. Any questions whatsoever? In with the bad air, out with no. In with the good. I've had too much coffee. I told you. In with the good air, out with the bad air. In with the good air, out with the bad air. Don't pass out on me. Don't hyperventilate. All right. Okay, so Miss Anera, are you good to go ahead and begin the presentation?
I am.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Eric and Whitney, and I'm going to shut my yapper and let you go. Let me, let's see, I turned off some things I turned on as far as when you guys met without me. I think I need to make you the host in there. So let me just do that real quick. Or co-host. There we go. Yes. All right, Miss Anera, you got the keys to the kingdom.
That's dangerous.
I
Let's see.
need to mute myself.
Okay. Slideshow. Let's go back. Okay. Good evening, everybody. So my task is from the planning educational facilities, what educators need to know by.
You can't see your screen.
Y'all can't see my screen.
Mm-mm.
Thank you, because I'm just going on like you can. What did I do? What do y'all see? Share.
We see the main screen with everybody's faces on there. So a lot of times you'll click share screen, which you already know to do this. And then when it comes up, click the blue screen.
Here we go. This time we're ready.
Yay!
Can you see it now? Okay. All right. So let me go back. Nope. No, I can't see it. Can y'all see it? Because all I see is you, Dr.
Yes, we
Fuller.
can see it.
Okay. So I'm going to go on. No, that's not it. Where did it go? All right. I'm gathering myself. We're there. But anyway, from the text by Glenn Earthman, I am going to share with you information from planning educational facilities. Every school system needs to know how many students will be enrolled in the future to do worthwhile planning. So this chapter focuses on planning in your school system long range. During the planning process, the school system identifies and develops the educational program to be offered in the areas served by the organization. The next step is to determine the number of students that need to be educated, both now and in the future. Using this information, school buildings can be located to accommodate population increase, or in the case of declining enrollment, the student population can be housed in fewer buildings. The text begins to talk about the 4 F's that need to be informed for your planning: funding, faculty, facilities, and function. And all of this revolves around the question, how many students will be enrolled? And we're all familiar with ADM and the first 10 days, 20 days head counts. And it funds us through our ADM, and we know how important this is, but this really goes to that lens of being that district leader, which we are quickly becoming, and talks about even more so than just that beginning and going even further to be able to provide for your district whatever it needs to meet the needs of the entire community. A projection is a projection, but what a projection must be is an informed guess about what's happening. It is a guess because there is no way to know for sure, but it has to be informed by uh, some data so that we can provide, going back to the 4 F's, the funds, the faculty, and the facilities for our children. So the basis of projection, it talks about a lot. This chapter is packed full. It's like 30 pages of information, and some of it made me feel like I was in our methods class that we took because it's really involved. But two major factors to consider revolve around human behavior: procreation and the mobility of humans. Like we can move, we can pick up and go anywhere, and so we have to think about things that are related to that. Enrollment projections are based on previous behavior. What are some previous behaviors that may impact procreation or mobility? And so, right here, I do want you all to share out, what do you think are some behaviors that might impact making projections? We can drop something in the chat and I'll go. And what is something that you think might impact the population in your community and indirectly impact um, planning for schools?
Availability of resources such as housing.
Okay, somebody said housing. Get out of the book, Eric Barton.
I don't even have
Somebody said new housing developments, construction projects, new apartments.
New
There's something that
jobs.
happened in Wilkes, and
New
you know, that I'm trying to not to reference everything in Wilkes, but just it's a good example. Lowe's Home Improvement used to have their corporate headquarters in Wilkes County. All of a sudden, they moved to Mooresville. Our ADM went from 10,000 down to 8,000 in about a 3 year span because families moved out because they moved where their jobs were, and that was in Mooresville.
Well, in the text, it talks about things like how Hurricane Katrina impacted the enrollment in New Orleans. And so I thought about currently like how some of the states like California are experiencing these fires, and we don't necessarily think about it, but that's going to impact their enrollment as families move away to where they feel safe. And let's see, so it said fires, storms. Here's some other things that impact immigration rates. I know in Gaston we're experiencing the influx of Haitian Creoles, and so that is impacting our enrollment in some ways and their needs in particular. There's lots of apartments and things that are going up all around that impact employment rates, social conditions, fertility rates, non-public school options, dropout rates, ratio of births and deaths, military and federal installments. All these things impact enrollment projections in our areas. All projections must be based on some assumption, growth or decline. Is there anyone who feels like your area is experiencing decline?
I can't speak about my current area, but I'm from Flint, Michigan. And when General Motors packed up in the early 2000s and moved to Detroit, it took a lot of people. And then not to mention the water crisis and the effect that,
Right.
when I was in school, we had 58 public schools, and right now they have 7.
Wow. That's a great example, Eric, of how that might impact. And we don't necessarily think about those things, especially as even a school leader. That's what I thought about. like as I read, like as a school leader, I would have never considered these things, but on this level, on the next level, we have to consider the entire community as we plan.
And Nara, I had another one just to kind of
Yes,
relevant.
ma'am.
So, especially in Gaston, we're seeing a lot of charter schools
Right.
in the area. And of course, with all the options for choice, that could be something that may have an impact or does have an impact on enrollment declining. And then like moving ahead, I was talking to someone and they were telling us that a charter school is going to be coming in our area. And so already just kind of thinking through and strategizing some things of what to do so that our enrollment doesn't decrease.
When you talk about charter schools, Bridget, also in our area right now, we're experiencing one of the charter schools that closed. So that changes the projection because it took some of our children and now it's closing and our enrollment is going to rise in certain schools.
Mm-hmm.
The charter schools, thinking about what Eric just said a few minutes ago, when
Did she drop or did I?
No, you're
She
good.
did.
I think she dropped.
Okay.
Well, while she's waiting to come back on, I'll stay in Cumberland County in their 2024-25 strategic plan, or I'm sorry, the financial plan. They had put in there that Cumberland County is projected to lose over 1,000 students because of the charter schools. And then because it is a military community, a lot of the transient students coming in normally, we usually get a high influx of students that come into Cumberland County around July, August timeframe. And then most of them kind of leave out January, February. That's normally. However, now the military doesn't have like set times. We used to call it down times in which they would go, PCS to other counties, or LEAs or countries, wherever they're going. But now, because of the charter schools and different things that they have going on, they are set to lose over 1,000 students.
That's going to impact them in a major way. So one of the things that I also learned is that every school system is required to conduct a census enumeration of the students in its geographic area. And what happens here is it's like census report, but not on you're only looking at the children. Some say from age 2 to 18, some from 0 to 12. And not only are you finding out about how many children are in your area per grade level, per age, and getting some really specific information, but you collect information about those children who might have disabilities. Because remember, if we go back to the F's, we want to have the funds and we want to have the facilities and the faculty to support the needs of the area. So I thought that was very interesting that that's one of the ways that we plan for DEC or SPED or whatever it's called in your area, is that the census has to go forward. Talks about different ways that the census can be done door to door, but the fact that we are required to go out, and I don't know, again, that we realize some of the mandates that are on the district to have to collect information to be prepared for what's going on. So just a question, and again, we can drop this information in the chat or just shout it out. How long do you think is long enough for long-term planning now that we have had that discussion about all the things that can go into it?
I think it depends on whether or not it's going to be revisited.
I think what we learned from this chapter is that it has to be revisited because things change. And so what it suggests is that really there's no right answer. It just depends on what the district decides to do, basically. But like Teresa said, understanding that, let's go back, understanding that this is just a plan and just a projection, and that we need the most accurate information to be able to have the best plan. And so it was interesting to me to think that a school district could literally be planning 20 years out for what's going to happen based on trends now. But when you consider all that goes into it, and the demographer and the inclusivity of all the community, everything that's going on, because things that we see happening today, they didn't just plan to put up an apartment building last year. You know, those things are in the works. And so to be able to plan and use the best methods. The text reads, the longer projection period will not increase accuracy of projections. A 20-year student enrollment projection can only provide a guide to growth trends and will not indicate the actual number of students that will be enrolled 2 decades later. So projections are only as accurate as the data used to inform them. So when the text begins to talk about this data and all the different forms, this is when y'all started to feel like methods and started to talk about different ways to collect data, and would really need a really close study. But I just want to introduce you to some things. So data collection methods will answer questions like, will enrollments increase or decrease? Will the increase or decrease be like increases and decreases that have occurred in the past? If the increase or decrease is not similar, in what ways will it be different? Then the text goes on to talk about forecasting. And forecasting is basically studying data to be able to make an informed prediction about what's going on. So you could make a forecast based on the total, the population total. We could make one based on analogy, survival rates, or by geo-reference data. But this is the bottom line, and what I took away from the chapter overall, because it goes into depth about each one of those, but I would never want to misinform you. And what we need to know as educators is how many students will be enrolled, because that drives our funding, that drives the faculty that we need, the facilities, and how the facilities will function. And so I think it's important to know that we're responsible for knowing this information and using it to guide how we prepare for the future in our different districts. Thank you all for your time and attention.
Great job in there. Does anybody have any comments? You're getting applause, which is totally not surprising. I do want to make a few quick points here. First of all, I'm very impressed that you brought up looking at this through the lens of a district leader. Just when you were going through your master's, you had to take off the glasses that allowed you to view things in a teacher perspective in your classroom and start looking at the school as a whole. I'm very glad that you are now thinking, okay, I can't look at this as a principal and assistant principal. I need to look at the district as a whole. It's not just about what affects your classroom. It's just not about what affects your whole, your school, but how does your community affect? So I really like that. And I'll tell you another thing that we've been having a lot of conversation in, talking about changes in enrollment, possible fluctuations, and shifts that could happen to you. And listen, I'm not being political. Please don't take this. I am not political whatsoever. So I don't want you to take it that way, but I do want to draw a point. What if you have a legislature, which we've seen this in the past, a representative or a senator, or even a school superintendent, a state superintendent, who is elected that has no background in public education? who only has a background in charter school, who only has a background in homeschool. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not against homeschools. I'm not against charter schools. You know, I'm public schools, and I'm going to do my best to make sure they survive and thrive. But things like that can change as well. So I wanted to, you know, and I, like I said, I'm not saying anything negative about anybody. I'm just saying the facts of the matter are these are some things that can have an impact on it as well. And one thing I would recommend you to be thinking about, if you don't already do this, when you get in this position, one thing that my superintendent and I do every month is we attend all economic development council meetings that the community holds. We attend all Chamber of Commerce meetings that the community holds, because that keeps that. First of all, we develop those relationships and partnerships with those people, but that lets us know, where's the new apartment building going to come? Is there a new business coming in? Is there a new business leaving? What's the housing rate? What's the realtors, the board of directors get up and give their report. How's the housing rate? And that really, just attending those meetings can be so beneficial in the long run of keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community with some of the things that the chapter talked about. All right, so next up, we have Mr. Barton. Mr. Barton, are you ready, sir?
Always.
All right, well, you now have keys to the kingdom, sir. So you begin whenever you are ready. And you are ready.
Can y'all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, chapter 6. Good evening, family. It's good to see everybody again, as always. In the best interest of time, I don't think that I'll need the full 25 minutes. I'll try to make sure we can make it to 7:30, as previously planned. So this is my presentation on chapter 6. It falls right in line with everything that Mrs. Henderson already talked about. But this particular chapter continues with long range planning, but talks specifically about the facilities, evaluating the facilities and making sure that we are using our facilities to the best that we can, that we're maintaining the facilities and what we have, and that evaluating the need for additional facilities or purpose changing of the facilities. So again, why do we evaluate our existing buildings? One of the biggest things is, again, just determining whether or not it can house the number of students that we are planning for it to house, or do we need to look at a program change? For example, there's a school that I know of who they closed down the middle school and left the elementary school next door closed. I mean, they left the elementary school open. And so they tore down the middle school, and now they're going to build a new middle school, but that middle school is now going to become 3rd through 8th, whereas the elementary school will now become pre-K to 2nd. So evaluating whether or not they're able to actually accommodate, those age ranges in those facilities. Look at what improvements are necessary for any building. So making sure that, again, our buildings are operating at the most optimal level. Develop a list of building improvements and maintenance items to be included in the improvement program. So looking at things that we may need to do to improve them, whether it be in the future, we know that we need to pave the parking lot. Or in the future, we know that the roof is going to need to be replaced, HVAC is going to need to be replaced. In the future, we know that we're going to have X amount of enrollment. Do we need to bring in some trailers to accommodate that? Just in general, looking at the building to see what improvements we can make, as well as in general maintenance items. Is our plumbing outdated? Our water fountains are outdated? Do we have an opportunity to replace the water fountains? It gives us an opportunity to collect and provide data based on the buildings, determines the extent each facility aids in desegregation and reacts to population shift, which is a little sticky one, because sometimes we know that just based off of the location and the community, that You know, desegregation is not necessarily always the goal. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. And but we do have to look for opportunities to respond to that and be proactive on that if possible. And that boils down to looking at, you know, zoning lines and all those wonderful things, and then verifying existing available teaching spaces in the school, or to gather data. So to implement such an inventory. So another example, just looking at the school that I'm currently at, we've had increase in enrollment. Even since I joined the school January 1, you know, the enrollment has increased about 35 to 40 students. And the projection for our allotment for next year is already still under that number. So, and with the neighboring charter school closing, which had a lot of school kids from that particular community, we're going to be like busting out of the seams, but trying to be proactive in planning and being prepared for that. So, based on Earthman's recommendations in the book, these are the people that should be or are recommended to be involved in the evaluation team. Now, depending on the type of evaluation or the purpose of the evaluation, this list could change, and it is somewhat fluid. But a school facilities representative to lead the team. So whether it's, you know, head of facilities or a specific designee of that person, the school principal, of course, being the building leader. Sometimes teachers or staff from the building, just because they can provide positive input or impactful input, because they just have a different lens. If necessary, someone from central office, curriculum and instruction, particularly because as you think about the building's future, looking at changes that may need to happen that are coming down the pipeline that, you know, the building principal may not even know about. So again, just like the example of changing from being a kindergarten to 5th grade school, potentially central office may be saying, hey, we're going to add pre-K to your building. So making sure to be mindful of that. Of course, someone from facilities, architecture, or construction, if we have someone in-house, or maybe an outside agency if we need one, especially if we're looking at a major project like some sort of easement or additions to the building or anything like that.
I apologize for interrupting you, because your narration is spot on and I'm enjoying it. But we are looking at slide 7. I don't know exactly what slide you're looking at, just to let you know.
Slide 7.
Yeah, that's what's showing on our screen. So, but continue on, because you're doing a great job anyway.
Okay, what about now? Is this?
We're still seeing Barton chapter presentation. We're actually seeing the editing part of Google Slides, and not necessarily the slide that you're referring to.
Okay, I'll pull it back up.
Thank you.
All right, can you see it now?
On the black screen now. Maybe if you grab it and slide it over, I don't know if you're using 2 monitors or not. Sometimes that works.
It's that one.
Yes, sir. Now we're looking at slide 2, and I see your mouse cursor
perfect.
moving around. You're good. Thank you.
All right. So moving on to the frequency of evaluation. So how often certain things need to be inspected. There are, of course, some things that we want to make sure that we get evaluated annually. There are some things that we may want to get evaluated not as often, depending on, again, the purpose. Things like HVAC, plumbing, lighting, communications, those are things that we want to make sure that we're keeping up with, because those are vital to just in general operation of the school. So making sure that we're keeping up with our basic structural components like the roof, the floors, the walls, the windows. Again, making sure that our buildings are safe and that we are maintaining them to the best of our ability. Earthman does say that the recommendation is that some of these evaluations be done by someone outside of the building, not the principal, just because they have a different lens and less objectivity. They're less likely to say, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. We still function, versus someone that, is non-biased because it's not their building saying this needs to be taken care of. And I think one of the biggest examples of that is our wonderful fire marshal inspections. We know that fire code sometimes can be a pain, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles, and it's important. It's a life safety measure. One of the biggest things we see is always the paper on the walls, or not fit more than 50% of one single wall being covered, or things being too close to the ceiling. All those being important things. Of course, we never want a fire to happen, but we can't predict that. And we want to make sure that our building, our staff, and students are all safe. Moving on to the maintenance evaluation. The Earthman recommends that the principal, the custodian, the teacher rep, and central office personnel, if needed, are present. As far as the maintenance evaluation is concerned, the biggest things that we're looking for, again, general upkeep. Another thing being classroom furniture. Is our furniture appropriate for the students that we are serving? For example, we had to make some classroom shifts, so the grade level might have changed in that room. We don't want to put fifth graders in a room with second grade or kindergarten furniture. Making sure that we are keeping up with that need, making sure that there's no broken windows, clogged plumbing, broken doors, all of those things, which also come through in other evaluations as well. Moving forward, special evaluations. These are things that are caused, a lot of what Mrs. Henderson was saying, changes in student population. Again, are we having an influx of additional students? Are we changing in general the group of students that we serve? Are we going from being an elementary school to now a middle school, or middle school to now an elementary school? Just making sure that we're able to adapt. Major changes in educational programming. If we're becoming a specialty school, for example, if we become a performing arts school, it might be important that we have a stage or an auditorium. And then structural building failure. So if we have something structural, make sure that we are able to adjust and have someone actually come out and evaluate that and make sure that things are safe, or give us the next steps to move forward. I'm going to come back to appraisal instruments because I want to hit indigenous evaluation instruments first. So there's different instruments that districts are using to evaluate whether or not their buildings are operating, or to just in general do their evaluation. I wanted to start with indigenous evaluation instruments first, because while it sounds much more fancy than it really is, it's just an evaluation that the district has come up with themselves. It's one that the district comes up with because they're wanting to collect specific information. Rather than using one of the tools, they can pull different pieces from different tools to make it a super evaluation for them to meet the need that they have. So going back to appraisal instruments, these are for the four that were provided by Earthman in the text. I've linked all four of them. I dropped the links in the chat. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple minutes for our group activity. If you look at the bottom, you'll see which tool you are to look at. But if you'll take a minute just to look at the tool, look at some of the things that are shared in the tool, some of the things that are looked for in the different tools. What stands out to you? What similarities do you notice is what we'll talk about once we come back together. And then the major differences. And do you know if your district has used one of these instruments or maybe developed their own? I know that Gaston has a long range facilities plan. It is a little out of date now. But I'm still not certain as to whether or not they've used one of these tools. But based on the data that's shared in it, it looks like, of course, they had an outside company that does it, and it's a tool that they probably came up with, because it does not match any of these tools or any that I've seen so far. So if you take about, it's 8:08, 8:09, we'll take 2 minutes. At 8:11, we'll come back and just kind of talk about the different tools. That 2 minutes went really quick. I'll give you another minute or so. All right. So just really quick, as you glanced through those, I mean, some of them are very lengthy documents. But one of the things that you notice, just even looking at the titles of them, is that they are very specific to their purpose. And which is why I could see why districts do a lot of creating their own indigenous documents, just because a lot of them are very specific to a very specific purpose. If you look at what the 21st century one is looking at, it's going to be very different from what the high functioning, high performing high school ones looks like. So starting with group one, did anything stand out from you from the tool that you looked at?
You know what I thought about, Eric, was when you asked the question, like, do we use them? And as I was going through it, I remember doing something like this with like third graders when I was a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought was, at that time, as a classroom teacher, I might not have had awareness of what the bigger picture was, and was just doing my part by giving it to my third graders. But I do remember, like, why are third graders doing this survey about whatever they're doing it about? But it very well could have been a part of a bigger picture that, as a teacher, my only part was, you do your one little class. That's what I really thought about.
And a lot of times as teachers, we think, now what in the world is district sending us something else to do? Something like this. What does this got to do with
Right.
Absolutely. Group two, anything that stood out about the evaluation tool that you looked at?
Very detailed, over 120 pages. So kind of just agreeing with you, sir, how it's um, very specific to a specific purpose, but could definitely see how it could be modified and you would still have a very helpful, detailed, supportive protocol to use.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I noticed that's different from 1 to 2, 1 had a lot of like surveys and everybody's input. Where you look at 2, which was actually, as I was going through these resources, was kind of my favorite one because it's so detailed. And it talks about 3 specific things for each requirement, one being the requirements, the implementation, and the documentation, which are 3 strong points for validating what you're getting by using the tool. So thank you, Catherine. Group 3, tool 3. Anything stick out to you about tool 3?
I looked at the wrong one. I looked at tool 3 instead of tool 2. So I talk a little bit about 3 if you want me to.
Okay, go ahead.
So with the tool 3 was a fit tool, facility inspection tool, very detailed, very, very detailed with when you are inspecting for things from pest infestation to fire safety to even classrooms, what that needs to look like. So it provided a checklist of questions if there's a gas leak, all of those things, very, very detailed with what it was asking and what you should look for to inspect it well.
And
Absolutely.
if you don't mind me adding, I'm sorry, I was looking because we have an alignment in Cumberland County in terms of the inspection with the custodian supposed to walk around. So a lot of the things that was identified in the tools was things that they come around and look for in their inspections. So when the head custodians go around and do their inspections, I know my head custodian, he used to do his inspections with his personnel at least once a week. They had a checklist. And so a lot of things that he put on their individual checklist was things that was identified in the tool.
And a lot of if when we look at the fit tool, a lot of these things are things that we see in just our fire inspection or our monthly inspection reports that we send in for for our fire and life safety inspections. But if we looking at this tool, it focuses specifically on the facility, the structural, the systems of the facility versus, so going back to number 1, looking at input, function of the facility, looking at tool 2, which focused on specific, very, very specific functioning of the classroom and very specific functioning of what the teachers or what the staff are doing in the building. And looking at tool 3, which focuses specifically on the physical facility itself and all of the systems that are within the facility, such as HVAC, plumbing, structural, those types of things. And then last group that looked at tool 4.
Tool 4 was a facilities master plan checklist, and it was created for the superintendent and like the school boards to go through and just check off the master plan. Like, for example, look and see if the vision of the plan inspires the school district. Does it support high quality schools? Does it contribute to the safe neighborhoods? Is it based on accurate data? Is it manageable and feasible by the school district? So just a tool they can use to go back and look at the plan to make sure it's good for the district.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. So just reflection and managerial leadership, what can we use? I think it was a lot of information in such a little short 5-page chapter, but a lot of valuable information, especially as a building leader, looking at all of these different components that, while we know they're important, and while we kind of take for granted the fact that all of these things are functioning, but as a building leader now being more intentional about paying attention to all of these systems a little bit more. So thank you, everyone. That is it.
Great job, Eric. Thank you very much. I just want to make real quickly, I just want to make a couple of observations because a couple of things that really um, kind of resonated with me is, you talked about tearing down that school. Just as much planning and preparation needs to go into tearing down the school, closing the school, as opening the school. So just kind of reflect on that. If the ADM just drops so low that you have to close the school, well, how long does that process? When you involve the community, how do you talk to the community? How do you make that happen and without hurting feelings? Like the school I went to when I was young, 60 years ago, you're shutting it down. So as much planning has to go to closing or tearing down the school and how that impacts the schools around it as that. Inspections, great point. Inspections are good, observations are good. Some inspections have to be done by somebody certified to do them. Roofing inspection, electrical inspection, plumbing inspection. So it's good to do that. It's also good to bring in third-party companies feasibility studies because it's then somebody outside of the system, inspectors outside of the system telling you what you need to do, not the school board telling you what you need to do. So if there's some controversial things going on like closing the school, it's good to have an outside company to make that recommendation and you not make it the board make it to where there'd be an issue with that. So I just wanted to make that great activity. Okay, Miss Iglesias, you are ready to go in just a moment. As soon as I can give you, there we go. You are good to go, ma'am.
Yeah. So I put something in the chat because a part of my presentation, we were going to go into breakout rooms and have two different scenarios. However, Dr. Barton did a great job at presenting. So I only have 10 minutes remaining. So I want to make sure I am mindful of everyone's time as we've all had an extremely long day today. And so I put the information in our chat in the scenario, and Dr. Moore will actually be our board chairperson. So she will be responsible for leading the conversation and guiding us to a decision. Is that okay with everybody? If not, I could take the whole 20, but I don't want to have to do that. So, Okay, hold on. We are going to go. Okay, so I hope everyone can see this. So my chapter was chapter 7, long-term planning. So with long-term planning, the success of any plan is defined by having the necessary financial support when it is needed to pay for the implementation of things. And so normally with financial planning, this is the information that's normally covered in our board meetings. Sometimes they go into the closed sessions when they're trying to construct a plan prior to giving things out. But of course, with any good plan, you have to have a solid team around you. And so that's when our auxiliary service directors, different board members, just everyone is all hands on deck with constructing a plan. Funding for capital projects can come from a variety of sources. A new school building may be financed from a single bond issue, while in addition to an existing building might be funded from an annual operating budget of a school system. Any funds left over from any project, if any, must be returned to taxpayers unless the school board can legally relocate them to another capital project that can be completed with the excess funds. The control of capital funds is derived from how funds are obtained. The correlation between programs offered and the number of students enrolled in available spaces produces the number of new school buildings or classrooms that will be needed to construct a new building or add on to any existing building. So this need for any new construction must be addressed through the financial portion of any long-term planning. So when we look at the federal government funding, the federal government provides limited funding to public schools because it doesn't have the responsibility of educating its citizens. And so in Cumberland County, E.E. Smith High School is one of the most historic high schools here. And so it was built in the 1950s. So for the last 2 or 3 years, it's probably been longer, but for the most part, it's been discussed in our board meetings. It was projected that they wanted to rebuild E.E. Smith High School. They've been dealing with things such as air conditioning not working, Wi-Fi in certain areas, and even asbestos in certain areas of the school. And so they've kind of been doing patchwork. And so the alumni of E.E. Smith have been calling for the construction of a new building. So prior to the pandemic, CCS had estimated the construction costing at least $90 million. So now, in the latest board meeting in March, it said that the cost is $160 million. And $160 million, almost half of the budget for a capital improvement plan of 100 schools. So why am I discussing this in this portion? Well, one part of the suggestion was that they should build the new E.E. Smith on Fort Liberty Striker Golf Course. However, parents had it came to the board meetings and it became a heated debate where they had said they did not want the school to be built on Fort Liberty's property because a lot of the parents, they have warrants and things, you know, they smoke weed. That's kind of the hood. The Merc is the hood. You don't go in there after dark. And so they know that if it is on military grounds, they can't do some of the things that they could do when it is on like state grounds. So now they are looking at other places where they can build it because they know that if that facility is built on Fort Liberty, that means that the federal government is responsible for everything, to include hiring of teachers. So that means every teacher in that building could potentially lose their job because with Fort Liberty, their first preference is veteran preference or spousal preference when it pertains to jobs. Those teachers are not paid the same amount of pay as a teacher that works for a state. The starting salary for a teacher, a first-year teacher at Fort Liberty, is normally between $60,000 to $70,000 a year. Compare that to the national average for a teacher, a regular teacher, BT1 is $40,000. That doesn't include any extra degrees that teacher may have. So that means that the federal government would have been responsible for any of the things necessary that for that particular school. So they have actually taken that off the building. So that is why I was discussing that in this part of my presentation. So as it pertains to state funds, states do not provide a significant amount to local school systems. The amount of assistance a state gives local school systems for a new construction ranges from absolutely no state funds in 12 states to full funding of capital projects in Hawaii. And approximately 75% of the states provide some type of state assistance. That confirms the idea that most states believe in some sort of shared responsibility for providing housing to students. 27% of the states have enacted great grants and aid programs to provide state assistance to local school systems. And the interest rates of state loan programs are usually below the rates obtainable on the open market. In some cases, as much as 3% below. Local government funding. So the local school system has the largest responsibility for funding the construction of new school systems. And the local school system has a limited tax base to secure funding for capital construction. So most schemes for raising funds rely heavily on the debt to be paid over a period of time. So you have a pay-as-you-go, and the pay-as-you-go method of raising funds for school buildings stipulates that building would take place only when funds are available. Funds for this method would be available through the operational budget. You have sinking funds. The sinking fund method is also referred to as a capital reserve fund or a reserve fund. And with this reserve fund account, specific money is set aside each year to continue building the sinking fund. And the fund spreads the cost of the building over a number of years, and high interest rates are avoided. Then you have the general obligation funds or the municipal. Okay, that's my Mississippi accent. Hopefully you understood that. The municipal bonds. And this is a traditional method school system uses to finance the capital construction. And the proceeds from this sales can be used for any purpose, including planning, designing, constructing a building, contracting, planning expertise, design work, construction, equipment, site purchases, even the employment of in-house educational planners. And so when a school system decides to go into a debt bond referendum, and I think Dr. Barbara had talked about this in her 45-minute presentation the first time. She talked about the debt bond referendum in her particular county. This must be held so that the voters have an opportunity to express their wishes. And the school board and administration must observe the legal procedures involved with the process of going into debt. This includes limitations of indebtedness, vote of approval, the type of bonds to be issued, payment of the principal, maximum term of payment, maximum interest of rates, restrictions on the sale of bonds, tax rate, time limits for election notices, and voting procedures. And so here are our different types of bonds. I'm just going to give you just a brief snapshot of each. Term bonds are issued for a predetermined period, at the end of which all bonds are redeemed. Seeking fund bonds are term bonds in which the principal of the bond issue is paid at the end of the term. And at the redemption date, the full amount of the bond issue is paid. You have serial bonds, which are redeemed at various times during the life of the bond issue. With this bond, a set number of bonds are redeemed during the first 5 years, then the next 5, and so on and so on. And then you have the amortization fund, and these bonds are similar to serial bonds as there are no balloon payments. An additional advantage with this mortgage is that with each payment, the debt load of the school system is reduced proportionately. So again, this was a portion where we were going to break out into groups and do all of that. But again, if you check your group chat, you will see that the scenario is as follows. The Oakville School Board has gathered to decide the future of Oakville High School. The facilities manager reports that renovation would cost $15 million and take 2 years, while building a new school would cost $30 million and take 3 years. The financial officer explains that issuing bonds could cover the cost, but would increase taxes. Alternatively, they would seek grants or private partnerships, which might cover part of the cost, but come with certain conditions. The community liaison shares mixed feedback from the community. Some favor a new state-of-the-art facility, while others are concerned about higher taxes. The educational consultant emphasizes the potential for improved student outcomes with a modern, well-designed school. The board chairperson must guide the group to make a decision. So board chairperson, Dr. Moore, you now have the floor.
Okay, so you all have heard what's going on with Oakville High School. So am I going to ask everybody to speak with you? I don't know. So do we have anybody want to speak on it? What would you think we should do? Should we do the bond, or should we just, what's the other option? Seek private partnerships? What do you think, Dr. Cope?
I think it can be a combination of both, because I know with a bond there are limitations, and with private sponsorship you have more flexibility.
Okay, would anybody else like to add anything? Facility manager's portion. So it looks like it's going to cost $15 million and take 2 years to renovate it. And a new school will cost $30 million and take 3 years. So something definitely needs to be done, though. So I think we're going to have to kind of table this, and
I question whether or not, this was just the first hearing of this, or what's the background on this? I mean, when she says that the board chairperson has to guide the group to make a decision, I mean, what have been the previous steps before this? You know, did they hire an architect or whatever that process, or did they do some information session? So I have a lot of questions when it comes to this. How is she going to guide the group in this decision? What's going to be? There needs to be a plan, I guess.
I'd like to know
I was
more
thinking,
actual condition of the building. Like what condition is it in now to where is it really truly worth renovating it, or do we just need a new one? Is it really going to be beneficial for renovation? Is that 15 million really going to bring it to what that $30 million school could be?
And also, I would question whether or not what's going to happen to the students as they're either renovating or building a new building, because school isn't going to stop. It's going to take 3 years to build a new one, and I can't remember, 2 years to renovate the old one. What happens to the students in both scenarios?
And this
So you
reminded
all
me.
came, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say it kind of reminded me of what's going on in our school district in Chester County. Like with our high school, Chester High School is kind of similar to this. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's going to take a lot. We need to be renovated. If we're going to keep it, it's a lot of renovation need to be done up in the millions. And we would like a new building, new school, which is going to be millions of dollars. And we've had several bonds. It has not passed. In the meantime, my students have just stayed there and we're just trying to make do. So this is very similar to what's going on with us now.
So you all did just what I actually wanted you all to do, because Dr. Henderson originally talked to us about student enrollment projections. And you all talked about the students and what would that look like for the students. And then Dr. Barton talked about evaluation of existing facilities. I didn't give you enough information about the facilities. Therefore, you all had to ask the questions. Well, how long has it been like this? What does it look like? Have we been out there? Have you all sent things out there? That's a part of our long-term planning that comes with our jobs once some of us, all of us, just kidding, become superintendents. So you all did just exactly what I wanted you all to do and have the conversations necessary for us to move forward. That way I knew that y'all were listening to me. So thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. And so as we come to a close, sorry, can't. Okay, my reflection. So we know that finances can truly make or break an organization. I think I heard it before, and I know they say it in Cumberland County schools, but as a leader, one way to lose your job, they say that I think it's the 3 S's or 3 M's. I don't know, but money is one of them. Finances, something. Anyways, the other stuff isn't too nice. But as school leaders, some of us are principals, some of us are assistant principals, some of us are directors. We all have to do long-term planning, especially when it pertains to finances and how we're going to allocate funds, how we're going to get personnel. And so just thinking about it on a grand scheme of things, when you think about an entire district, we know that the long-term planning of it all is vital and it's essential. So I would like to leave you all with just 3 quotes. And this is going to not only summarize this presentation, but it's also going to summarize our dissertation journey, which comes to this class journey, but begins our dissertation journey, which kind of for some of us begins after this class. But some have already started their journey. Winston Churchill states that plans are of little importance, but planning is essential. Likewise, Benjamin Franklin asserts that if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And lastly, Margaret Thatcher states that plan your work for today and every day, then work your plan. We have to work the plans in our communities, in our districts. Likewise, we have to work the plans that we've set out, and we've asked God to put us on this path. So we have to work the plan we asked him for. We asked to be on this journey. Some of us cried. I'm speaking for myself. Y'all ain't got to admit it. I'm just going to say I cried many a nights when we first started this journey, and we had plans. And so at this point, when we are tired, when we want to give up after attending that The class last week, I left and I think I put in my reflection, like I felt defeated. But we have a great cohort of people, of family members, because I consider you all my family, though I don't hear from some of y'all quite often. But I mean, I appreciate y'all. We still family. But we have to work the plans that we have set before us. And so we know that it's going to be hard, but just continue pushing, continue thriving, because eventually we are all going to be robes and we will be named doctor. So this is my presentation. Thank you all so much for listening. All right, Dr. Bullis, it's yours.
Well done, Whitney. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And okay, so I'm going to wrap it up very quickly. But Whitney, I don't want to take away. Hold on just a minute. I'm trying to see what I'm doing here. I don't want to take away from your presentation. Love the way you brought constitutionality and the funding of public schools in your presentation. That was an excellent point. It is the burden on the state to fund public education. However, the federal government likes to put their fingers on it as well. But if you do that, then you got to play by their rules. I love that. Also, community people coming to board meetings and talking can change your plans significantly. And that was a great point that you brought out. Love this scenario. That was great. You guys did a fantastic job with that scenario. So it was a joy just to watch you do that. As I said before, this is a fantastic group. I'm really glad to be a part of it. So I want to do the optimistic. Now I'm having a hard time talking, but the closure, optimistic closure. How do you want to be remembered? This is my all-time, this is my life verse. 2 Timothy 4:7. How were you remembered at the end of the day, at the end of the fight, whether you at the end of your tenure in class, at the end of your tenure in your dissertation, at the end of your tenure as an educator, at the end of the tenure of life, how do you want to be remembered? Can you look back at the end point of whatever it is your journey you're on and says, I fought the good fight, I kept the faith, I stayed the course. Can you say that? And I just want to look at, I know you guys know that verse. I love that verse. I love Paul for writing that in the Bible and God inspiring him to write that. So just a few points. Perfect example of what you shared tonight. You can pull out and put in that CEP plan. Great theoretical statements, great research that you can pull in your introduction. That's a perfect example of what you're doing is going to help you with that capstone project. Don't forget to upload your presentation. That's how I grade this, is you uploading your presentation, plus your colleagues will benefit from, maybe if they're working on their capstone, they can go into your presentation and pull out some information that they may need. If you do that, be sure that you cite the person that did the presentation in your capstone project. We did go over tonight, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. When we go face to face, I'm going to pay you time and a half. You're working overtime now, so I'm going to pay you time and a half, and we'll let you go a little bit early on the Sunday because you stayed the course tonight. Is that good for everybody? All right. So when I say time and a half, it may be double time, triple time, just whatever I feel that you need, and God leads me to direct you. Thank you very much for a wonderful class. I hope and pray that you all stay safe and your family stay safe and they all stay healthy and you stay healthy. Any final words for anyone this evening? I am now going to bid you goodbye. Can't wait to see you next week. I hope and pray you guys have a great rest of your week and get some rest this weekend if you can. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.